All right, well, welcome everyone
Who's
to
participating? There's other people here on Zoom.
Hi, Catherine.
Check on the notes.
Sorry, they took me
Okay.
all week.
What?
I'm so sorry they took me all week
Okay.
to get to you.
So do you want to hear people?
Yeah, she's
Okay.
gonna be.
All right. This is the Tuesday night, June 18th, 2024 meeting of the Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Human Rights. We do not have a quorum right now. Maybe some people will come in, but just for the good of the order, we'll go around and introduce everyone that is here, and then we'll review the agenda just to make sure we know what we can cover tonight and put off till the next meeting. So I'll go ahead and start. Leanna Fellows, Chair.
Katie Bryden, Vice Chair.
Catherine Robinson, member.
And I'm Ann Krieg. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development.
And then Sarah, if you'd like to introduce yourself first.
Yes, hi, I'm Sarah Kirk. I'm a principal with HRNA Advisors. We're currently working with the city on a study, housing market study, and working to identify some tools for addressing affordable housing challenges or housing challenges more broadly.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Sophie?
Hi, Sophie Danish. I'm an analyst with HRNA, supporting Sarah on the team. Thank you.
And Debbie Laurie, City Manager, thank you for.
Thank you so much. As we noted at the beginning, we don't have a quorum, so we cannot approve the minutes at this meeting from the May meeting, so we will put that off till our August meeting because we are not meeting in July. So we'll just go right into the education because we don't need a quorum for that. So I'm going to turn it right over to you, Anne.
Great, thank you. As you may know, the city is working with a team of consultants to produce what's called a housing production plan. It's a plan that kind of takes all of the work we did in the comprehensive plan and the 2018-19 affordable housing recommendations, kind of taking it up a notch, if you will, to sort of really fine tune it to determine what kind of housing do we really need? You know, is it mostly market rate? Is it missing middle? Is it low to mod? You know, what are we missing? So I asked our consultants from HRNA Associates to come this evening as part of their outreach to, you know, kind of show what they've been working on, but also to get feedback from you as to, you know, what your observations are, what you see, so they can take that as they continue their work. So I'll let you, Sarah, probably take it away.
Great, and we're going to share some slides. Our goal today is to share a little bit, as Anne mentioned, we really just started our work here, but we've got some preliminary information about the housing market and some potential housing challenges in Bangor, and want to share those with you and talk a little bit about your goals and what you'd like to see as part of this effort. So just some brief introductions. HRNA works across the country on a range of affordable housing and housing market projects. We're real estate, economic development, and public policy advisors. Our affordable housing practice spans everything from strategic plans, housing needs assessments, to designing housing programs and also standing up funds to handle complex housing transactions. So understanding where there's a gap between, you know, what the market's providing and what the community needs, that's really right in our sweet spot, and what we're hoping to bring to this project. As I mentioned, I'm Sarah Kirk. I'm the project manager for this effort. Sophie Danish is also on the line. Philip Cash, who's the partner in charge and who leads the affordable housing practice at HRNA, is unfortunately not able to join us today. But we've been doing some work at the state level in Maine to understand the housing market, and we're really excited to continue that work with the city. As I mentioned, we've worked in a range of communities in Maine and elsewhere on a range of different types of projects. And really, again, our sweet spot is really in that place of understanding where public policy, community need, and market gaps kind of converge, and figuring out how to work with a range of actors to fill those gaps. The scope of work that we are currently pursuing with the city is really focused on understanding housing needs, housing supply, and demand. So who's living in Bangor, who's looking for housing, who's not able to find housing that meets their needs, and then what are some of the gaps in supply that might be driving those needs, and then identifying actionable tools and helping to give staff some clear implementation guidance on the design and deploying those tools to address those gaps. So we're right at the beginning of task 2 right now, working on a residential demand and market analysis. And then we'll be engaging in identifying some high-level strategies and priority setting. That said, we understand that the city already has a pretty clear sense of what the priority needs are. So, we're trying to make sure that we're getting a more nuanced view within that. There's concerns about housing supply, concerns about workforce housing, concerns about access to home ownership for first-time buyers. We're going to talk about all of this in just a minute.
Okay.
But we're trying to understand what's at play within that, and then think about how to target funds and other policies to meet those needs. So when we talk about housing, affordability, it really can mean a lot of different things to different people. It might mean access to home ownership, access to housing near jobs. It might mean housing stability and making sure that households don't feel at risk of displacement or eviction. It might be about the ability to age in place, the quality of housing, or just overall housing supply. And so one of the things that we're asking and want to get into a discussion with you all about today is, what are the most pressing issues that face your community? Are they these? Are they others? And then how should we be thinking about those as we start to work towards setting priorities? Because if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. Some of the things that have already come up in our work are focus on housing supply. Is there enough housing to match demand? And then again, who is able to find housing that meets their demand and who isn't? Rental affordability, access to home ownership, and then housing quality as well. So we want to talk to you a little bit about what housing issues you're interested in understanding better, and then how you would prioritize these, and if anything's missing. We have some preliminary data that we want to share, but is it helpful to stop here and talk about this a little bit, or should I kind of keep going and talk a little bit about some of the things we've seen in the market already?
Yeah, I would keep going with what you've seen already.
Great, okay. So when we look at housing supply, what we want to understand is, like as I mentioned, who has trouble finding housing, what kind of housing do we need, and what are the barriers that are limiting housing supply? So the city's made a lot of changes to its land use policies in recent years in an effort to make it easier to develop housing, but there's still a challenge, right? And some of those things include there's not housing available for people of any income, right? That's not something that you see everywhere, but it's something that we see here. There's an aging population and a limited sort of market churn or turnover of housing because there's not enough options for people looking for different kinds of housing. One of the other challenges that we've seen so far is that construction costs are high relative to the rents or sales prices. So that's a challenge that we want to understand a little bit better, and we'll be talking to developers and brokers in the area to really understand how much that's impacting what can get built and how we might be able to overcome that. And I'm sure none of that is surprising to you all, but I'm really open for discussion. I'd really love to hear what you think we missed. When we think about rental affordability, we want to understand what challenges renters face and then who has difficulty affording their rent. So the chart on the right-hand side here shows renter housing cost burden by income. So the blue represents households that are spending either 30% or more of their income, or in the case of the darker blue, 50% or more of their income on housing costs. And you can see that almost all renters with incomes below 50% of the area median income are cost burden. That means they're spending a disproportionate amount of their income on rent. They have less money available for other costs. They're more likely to face housing instability due to unforeseen expenses, things like that. But even when you look at like 60% to 80% of the area median income, you're still seeing a relatively high instance of cost burden for renters. So, that tells us that there's, excuse me, that there's a lack of affordable rental housing for households at those incomes. We see a lot less housing cost burden at those higher income levels, 80% of the median income and above. But you can see also there's relatively few renter households at all in that 80% to 100% area median income range, which I think speaks to the need that we've already heard for more workforce housing. So that's another thing that we're seeing there. There's a gap of about almost 2,000 affordable rental homes for households with incomes below 35,000 when we look at those lowest income households. And as I mentioned, most renters with incomes below 80% of the area median income are housing cost burden. Other things that we see, it looks like rents are growing faster than in other communities, and they're growing statewide. And you're also seeing a loss of low and moderate income households. So all of that together tells us that there's an extreme need for affordable rental homes at a range of incomes, but particularly those lowest income levels.
Can I ask a question about that last point?
Yes.
The loss of low and moderate income
Yeah.
household, is that because people are coming in and increasing the rents?
We can't really speak to the why at this point. I mean, we certainly want to get into that more, and we will be as we conduct some more interviews. We've just looked at kind of the change in income, change in household income over time, or the change in the distribution of households by income rather. And what we've seen is that you have fewer of those lower income households and more higher income households. Some of that may be due to rising incomes, right? But most of it is likely due to things like renters can't find housing that they can afford, and they're moving to other communities, or people who are moving in might be contributing to rising home prices. We can't really say the causation of that right now.
I think the why is an important part of this conversation, because I do think, and I hope that is something that does, we can lean into that, because what we hear a lot are properties being purchased and the landlord coming in saying, well, you paid this, we're now increasing it X. So is that resulting in a loss of that?
Sort of a
Is that part of it?
displacement housing.
Yeah,
Right.
great word, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just to rephrase, you're asking if it's due more to the rent on a particular unit going up and that household no longer being able to rent it, or just due to when people move, they're choosing to go elsewhere?
I mean, my specific question is to the first, but I think it obviously is gonna be a combination of both, but I think to see if it is possible to find out that displacement, how much of the percentage of that loss is related to displacement of rents being increased.
Yes, yeah. When we talk about displacement, we usually talk about indirect versus direct displacement. So direct displacement would be the home is condemned, or the household is evicted, or otherwise kind of forcibly removed from the home. Whereas indirect displacement is costs are rising, they can't afford to live there anymore. They're going somewhere else. And it is really hard to quantify those things, but that is something that we want as we're going to be speaking with advocates, service providers in the community who might be familiar on a more qualitative level with what's going on. That's something that we want to understand better.
Because I'm thinking that loss of low and moderate income directly speaks to that unit gap somehow, right? For the lower threshold.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. When we looked at home ownership, again, I'm sure that none of this is surprising, but very few younger adults own homes. You can see on the chart on the right, over half of the households that are homeowners are aged 36 to 64, and over close to 90% are 36 and older, right? Median home values increased sharply from 2020 to 2022, from a median of 155,000 to 190,000. So that's that means that fewer people are going to be able to access and afford homeownership. There's also racial disparity in homeownership. So white residents, 46% are homeowners. For Black residents, it's 17%. And then when we looked at cost burden, 18% of homeowners are housing cost burden and 26% of senior homeowners are housing cost burden. So thinking about the needs of seniors in the community, that's something that we're paying attention to. And then finally, housing quality. We weren't sure to what extent this was a concern. It seems like the concern is more squarely on housing supply than the condition of existing homes, but we also see, of course, there's a lot of older housing. And so we wanted to talk about is housing quality a concern, and then who's impacted by low quality housing. So that's just sort of the end of our brief presentation. Really, we really wanted to spend the rest of our time talking with you all about what are your concerns, what's surprising, what would you like to see in the study, and you know, what does success look like for this study for you all? So I'm gonna actually go back here.
Do either of you have any questions you'd like to or?
Well, I do have some questions, but the one that maybe is the most awkward to ask is, how do you address racial disparity in housing?
It's a good question. And I will not pretend to have the, magic answer. But there are things at the local level that can be done, even accounting for, fair housing requirements and things like that. The most straightforward thing is if, put money in homeownership and then use outreach, use partnerships with community organizations, use your community engagement networks to make sure that people in racial groups that have historically had barriers to homeownership, that have lower rates of homeownership in your community, have access to those funds. So you can't set aside those funds specifically for certain racial groups, but you can make sure that you're advertising, that you're doing your outreach, and that you're really designing programs and designing assistance in such a way that they meaningfully help to change what is affordable and what is accessible to those groups.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I have another question, but do you have? No, so far. My other questions are, they have to do with the housing stock that's in Bangor. I think that everybody is aware that we have a lot of big old buildings and a lot of buildings that have aged and don't have the accessibility that is required now. So what kind of evaluation is being done on the actual structures that already exist and whatever maintenance or changes can be made to them to be accessible and affordable housing? Is that cost prohibitive entirely? Is it more that we're just looking at new builds? What's the ratio there in terms of concentration and effort?
If I understand you correctly, you're asking if we in our study are going to be looking in detail at conditions in existing buildings. The answer is no. And we're not building inspectors, and we're not able to get to the building level in an assessment. If what we conclude is that housing quality is a really pressing issue and we need to be addressing it, we're likely to be having a conversation about, we're going to talk to the city's code inspection team to understand what their processes are. We're going to talk to brokers, rental property managers to understand, what kind of issues they're seeing in housing. We're going to be talking to service providers and tenant advocates to understand what issues tenants are seeing in rental housing. And we might be talking about if accessibility is a major concern, if, life safety repairs are a big concern, then we'd probably be talking about assistance to make property rent repairs. And those can be focused either on owner occupied properties in the case of, you know, a senior household or a lower income household that might need to replace their furnace, or a senior household that might need to make accessibility upgrades. You know, can you provide, usually they're in the form of low cost forgivable loans. But it depends, there's a lot of different ways to structure it, but can you provide assistance to those owners to help them make the improvements to their homes that they need in order to be able to safely remain in their homes? If the challenge is more on the rental side, then there's ways to talk about providing loans to property owners. Again, they can be focused at particular income levels or something else in order to make sure that they're able to afford to make repairs or incentivized to make repairs on their properties. So there's a lot of different ways to structure those programs to meet different needs. But we're not going to be doing kind of building level assessments. We're going to be working with, again, a range of stakeholders to kind of understand on a general level what are the challenges that people are seeing, and what can be done to shift the math a little bit on what's affordable and help people make repairs, address code issues, things like that.
Thank you, Sarah. That's all super helpful information, and I appreciate that. Maybe to clarify a little bit, looking at this almost from like, I know I'm getting in the weeds, but looking at it from an environmental impact statement, right? We have a lot of buildings that already exist that are not able to be used at this moment. So, and that's because they've been, you know, abandoned, are in different phases of disrepair. And my question is, while I know that you're not going to go in and say this building can or cannot be saved, I'm assuming, because you're not, like you said, a building inspector or code enforcer. And maybe that's more of a question for you, Anne, is that, are those assessments happening in Bangor? Because I do think that not only from a historical and preservation aspect, but from an environmental impact as well, like, are we thinking like at the end of this, we're gonna say, wow, we need so much housing, let's just get rid of all, like, this entire street of really big, old, but abandoned buildings and start over? Is that being looked at all? Is that almost too nuanced of a question?
Yeah, we have an internal multi-department committee that meets once or twice a month to go over the vacant property list, the tax, you know, all of those you know, the vacant placarded and properties that, the city's taken for taxes. And we try to coordinate, because there's a lot of state statutes that we have to follow about how many days of notice and things like that. So we have this huge spreadsheet that we track of, you know, when we can send this letter and when we can, so we're working on that. And then once it becomes sort of available to be able to be, you know, sold, our new housing officer is working on that to get that back into, you know, housing.
And part of that new vacant property process, the council also recognized that, and we know that there are a lot of times, a property is held by a bank who is 40 states away. And actually trying to get a hold of somebody. So what they did was they dramatically escalated the fees. So now if you're a vacant property, if you're an owner of vacant property, you're put on notice that your property appears to be vacant, you haven't registered. And you have X numbers of days to register. You'll get a reminder letter. And if you fail to do that, we'll take you to court. And then the fee starts at, is the fee start at 500 now?
Mm-hmm.
It's $500 every 6 months, and every 6 months the fee doubles. Where it gets to the point where it's $4,000 every 6 months. And that was our way of trying to entice.
Either
These
selling
absent-
or
absent owners into, and every letter we send, if you're interested in selling this property, please reach out and talk to this person and we'll help facilitate that.
We've been this for a couple of years, correct?
No, it's only been, I think that ordinance went in last year.
last
didn't it?
year.
So we're now just coming up on
coming up on that year mark or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
And as you know, what we do is we started with an existing list. But
Yeah,
as you ride around town, it's, oh, this doesn't look lived in.
Right.
Oh, this doesn't look
Yeah.
lived in.
Mhm.
So continuing to build.
Are you doing some of the same stuff with commercial properties?
We have not done it with commercial properties.
I just noticed that one building that was gonna have
Are you gonna
a
say Central
coffee
Street?
shop on
Are you
Central.
gonna say Central
Yeah.
Street?
Well,
That
it's been
property
$24
is the
million.
bane of our
That
existence.
property
It
is for
is.
sale, it's got for sale sign, isn't it?
And it's had a lot of interest, but yeah.
Andre, could you introduce yourself for the meeting minutes?
Have we started the meeting?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was started at
5:30.
5:30 today.
welcome.
I'm so sorry.
No,
That's okay.
That's okay.
I had on my calendar at 6, 5:30, okay, Andre Chassé, I am a committee member.
Thank
Thank
you. Can I wrap back to the question about accessible housing? I noticed we break it down by age and income and things like
Mhm.
that. Is there gonna be any part of your report out at the end that talks about maybe making a suggested percentage of housing be accessible based on the population that we have here? I'm not sure if you're actually digging that far into the population. Obviously not a number that you have to, that you're beholden to, but a suggested, whether, it'd probably be most applicable to rentals, the thing that we
Right.
had the most control over, but a suggested percentage of Bangor should have 25% of rentals be accessible.
Yeah, I mean, I would, be some assumptions we could make. Sarah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, I have not historically done that. I know, there are ADA and other laws that cover requirements for new construction. If we were to all decide that, accessible homes for seniors and others who need accessibility is a major priority for the city, and then yes, I mean, we certainly can make that a goal. I think more likely if we were to say work with you all to recommend an owner-occupied rehab program that focused on accessibility upgrades, weatherization, et cetera, critical repairs. We're more likely to set goals at the program level to say, if you can allocate this much funding to it, then we would expect you to be able to serve this many households in a year. And so the metrics for the success of that program would include, how many homes have had accessibility upgrades, how many homes have had critical systems replaced, things like that. So you'd more often frame it in that way than setting kind of a citywide target. But if you all come to me and say, like, it's really critical to the success of housing in Bangor that we have a citywide target for accessibility, then, and we're gonna run all of our investment in development and planning board decisions through that lens, then like, yes, we can talk about doing that. I haven't gone to that level of setting a target for accessibility at the market level.
I think of something from our last meeting that our speaker said, which is if you put disability at the forefront and not as an afterthought, you're getting a bigger, if you cast a bigger net, because not everyone might identify their disability, and disability expands all races, ethnicities, ages, everything. So it's not necessarily maybe about a target, but the idea that,
There's an emphasis.
right, you're acknowledging that
Correct.
exists in each population, each income bracket,
Yeah.
right?
We can certainly talk about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, it's gotta be at the forefront just because of our aging population, which I know you know, and you've
Yeah.
accounted.
Well, I mean, one way you can do that is to say, like, as you said, we recognize that this is a concern across all populations. And, as if there's anytime that we have projects that are coming to us for discretionary approvals, variances, et cetera, or that we're putting money into, one of the ways that we're going to measure our success is by what percentage of the homes in that development meet universal design standards or, things like that. And you can set that without saying like, this is a target. You can say, this is how we're going to evaluate ourselves whenever we have control over what gets built, right? When you're facing a supply challenge, you don't want to say, we're going to require this or we're going to set, because then you're kind of creating more a disincentive for development, but you can say, you know, if you're gonna come to us and ask for rezoning at a higher density, or if you're gonna come and ask us to put in money to this development or to, you know, build it on, you know, city, sell it for us to give you city-owned land to build this development. One of the things we're gonna be asking you for is what can you give us in terms of, you know, the number of units that meet universal design standards or other accessibility standards that you want to set.
I think that's absolutely the smart way to do it, because it's like we're saying, it's embedded into the work, you know, regardless. It's almost like you don't have, it should be the standard regardless of someone asking for it or not, right? You should be stating that because it does cross all populations, you
Right.
know. Any other questions or anything? I had another one just.
I don't want to like,
Hop in, come on.
well, I don't want to like ask questions that have already been answered, but where are we in terms of getting answers to these questions that are up on the screen? Are we at the beginning stage? Have we already collected some answers? Or do we have an idea of what the answers are?
We've done some data analysis, and this is the beginning of our sort of going a little bit deeper by talking to members of the community, talking to real estate professionals, service providers, advocates in the community, to understand kind of below the surface level of the data, what the data shows, like what are the real concerns that you're seeing in your community. So yeah, we're early stages, but not right at the beginning.
Okay.
I have just one last question. As part of your analysis, will you be, we have a couple of manufactured home communities here in the area, and HOA fees are going up pretty quickly for them, and I think we're also seeing that nationally. Is any of your analysis looking into that, the impact on that? Because a lot of the individuals who end up purchasing in those communities or renting those communities, you know, they're getting priced out of those communities, which used to be
Yeah.
affordable to them. So what the impact of that is on having on that?
Yeah, I think that's a helpful point to be aware of. You know, what we've looked at so far has not broken out, you know, monthly rents versus HOA fees versus utilities, right? When we look at things like cost burden, HOA fees are factored into that, but we don't have the breakout of, you know, what's being driven by insurance is going up, HOA fees, right? All of those things. So that's a really helpful comment and something that I think we need to keep in mind as we continue to think about these things.
That's great. The government, you know, expands the ability to use HUD funding for manufactured homes, but it can't account for the fact that, you know, in places those lot rents and things are going up, or even the price of land itself.
Yeah.
You know, that takes those people out of it now, Terry.
It's no longer affordable.
It is no longer affordable, that gap.
What are the current restrictions on folks? I mean, in terms of zones, being able to actually put a manufactured home on a particular piece of property, the land.
Right, I mean, it's it depends on what zoning district you're in, you know, our multifamily zone allows probably the most density for residential, and we have been, you know, putting that in a lot of areas,
And I think what I heard was, are there restrictions on the type of homes regardless of the zone?
Correct. That's what I'm
So,
saying.
no.
That's what I think he's
Yeah.
asking is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Can
so
you manufacture
yeah,
home
for
on
example,
a
if there's a piece of land in, you know, in the if, you know, there's a
Beside
home-
me,
Yeah.
in my single family.
Yeah, there's a home, for example, that's listed, you know, a condemned home. It's
Right.
listed on Jefferson Street for
Mhm.
$50,000. Could I buy that,
Mhm.
tear down the house and put up a mobile home?
You can put in a manufactured home, we're actually changing, the state statute has changed on mobile homes, like in the last 2 weeks. It just got signed, so we'll be coming for a change to, that we have to allow mobile homes everywhere.
Wow,
State
okay,
statute just,
that's
the
interesting,
governor
yeah.
just signed it,
Like
so.
Tyler, I know that's one of the big thing about the manufactured home parks is the language of it being
Right,
tied
it's
down
different,
versus a slab versus.
right, just, yeah. the
Foundation
slab,
versus,
yeah.
yeah.
Cause if someone wanted to do a piece of land or whatever, they want to put a slab down, you're paying 60,000 for a piece of land itself. That's not accounting for all the other things that have to go on.
Right.
And if you're buying a new manufactured home, you're already.
I know they're not
135,
inexpensive
150.
anymore.
Yeah,
No, yeah, but that did just go through, so, there are, I mean, some of the subdivisions sort of in outer, sort of the outskirts of Bangor, they do have private deed restrictions on some of them that aren't enforced by the city. They're privately enforced about what kind of house you can put on.
Yeah.
But anywhere else, yeah. You can now, and now with this new state law, you can put
That
in a
is
mobile home.
interesting.
That is.
Because I mean, someone, you could buy, go to Showcase Homes, you could buy
Mhm.
a single wide for like under $100,000.
And what
Yeah.
does that do to home value? Cause I know there's still a preconceived notion
It's
about.
better than a condemned home next year.
I'm not
Right,
making a judgment.
yeah.
Preconceived notions that people
That's an
have.
assessor question.
But there is, I mean, but part of me is like hopeful that maybe by this zone change and having, your neighbors put up homes that are actually very nice.
Mhm.
It can
Mhm.
change this idea that we need to sort of segregate this type of home into a park that is associated.
Yeah, that it can
with
only be
close
in
Well, my
a
question was really
economics.
around
Oh, it can
the
only.
land lease fee, right?
No.
So,
Previously.
Yeah,
yeah, my question was really around, around the land lease fee. Because if the
Yeah.
only place you can have a mobile home, which is affordable for some people, is, in a trailer park where you're gonna have to pay $500 or $600 a month. for
Yeah,
Land
right.
lease, then,
Right.
but if you
it could change
can,
a lot, yeah,
you
I think a good way, in a,
Right,
in a more accessible.
yeah, it's a pretty big change, that law that just got signed in, yeah.
Wow. Were there any other questions for our speakers tonight?
No, this is super helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
that.
coming in and sharing where you are. and We look forward to hearing from you all again, hopefully with more information and updates from you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I ask what that next update will look like?
When?
Probably, I think we're looking at, another update in August, so,
You can tell we're clamoring for information.
well, that's okay.
And that's good, because we don't have a July meeting.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
that's
right,
good.
yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
you,
thank
Sarah.
you.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
All right. Rental registry pilot program.
Yes,
It kind of gets to your questions, by the way, and it dovetails with what Sarah was referring to about how you incentivize investments for quality housing as it
Yeah.
relates to our housing stock.
Yeah.
right, so,
Um, I'm so sorry.
No, it's
I
okay.
was gonna ask and I forgot. I'm so sorry. I was like, I gotta get this in before I forget and
Go ahead.
And it's gone.
I forgot.
It's
Okay.
gone.
well, if you remember, jump in, it's okay.
Sorry.
I'm okay with that. So, yeah, we're embarking on a pilot program for rental registry. Pilot means that it's not a requirement. We, in the Community Development Division, we met with a bunch of landlords and renters and just kind of got a feel for what would happen if we had a registration. And what we heard back from the landlords is, obviously, nobody wants to come in and have to fill out a form and pay a fee. But what they did say to us is, we need communication from the city as to what programs are available to us and, how can, we communicate better with the city about what we're going through as landlords. And so it was a really fruitful discussion that we had a couple of meetings on it with different folks. And so we're doing this as a pilot, as a way to offer some of these programs. The block grant program is available right now to people that want to do heat pumps and other rehab, on the homes, including multifamily. The thing with block grant, as you know, is that it is restricted of what rents you can charge. But in talking to the landlords, what we found out was some of them are charging in that range. And they were surprised at that. So it was good just to be able to have that conversation. And we are looking, at other funding sources to kind of get into that missing middle piece. Because there's a lot of people that do rent for people that are in that 80 to 120% immediate income. And they can't get any of those subsidies. So, we're looking at other funding sources with city council to have those same programs be allowed for that missing middle piece of people that are in that middle income range. So it's sort of a way to say, hey, if you come in and you register, you know, you're gonna get that first dibs on all of this funding that we, offer. Because what a lot of the landlords, have told us, and what we find out from, working with our code office is a lot of people, when they get to that third unit or that fourth unit, they're required to do things like a sprinkler system. And retrofitting, I mean, putting in a new sprinkler system is expensive, but retrofitting one in an existing old house, talk about old stock, is really difficult and very expensive. So, that's something that we're looking at, can we offset that cost? To help people, so that they're code compliant. And the heat pumps, so that some of their operating costs can go down by offering heat pumps, so that helps the landlord with that, better heating system, cooling systems.
And both of those programs have an accessibility piece.
Yep.
To
Yes,
basically, not only to improve accessibility, but widen thresholds, the grab bars, whatever it may be. To ensure that we can incentivize investments that support accessible.
So when you were having these meetings or the conversations, I don't want to accuse the landlords of anything, but it sounds like some of them acknowledge they're not up to code on things.
well, it's that third unit, there.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm specifically talking about.
It's a non-conformity, like those units had been there since before that code went in, because I forget the year that the sprinkler requirement went in, and it wasn't that long ago. So you have a significant number of units that don't meet that because they came in before.
Are they
that
grandfathered?
require,
Considered
yeah,
grandfathered
non-conforming, yeah.
until it
So-
breaks and then they're.
So they can keep what they get, but if they do a major renovation, they would have to comply.
Right.
And so that's the problem with nonconformity, is that you're encouraging people to not invest in their properties, because then if they do, then they get
become into
triggered.
code compliance.
So that's why we're looking at this program to fund, to say, we can at least offset some of those costs for you so that you can be code compliant and still make renovations to your property. So,
Are landlords required to tell their tenants if it's not non-conformity? Like if they're not up to snuff?
Well, non-conformity doesn't mean not up to snuff.
right,
It just means they're not in conformance with the current code.
current code, but when they built it, it did conform to the code at the time.
Can I ask, do you have numbers on how many, or what percentage of landlords have come to file the paperwork?
We had, let's
It's
see,
just opening now.
yeah,
I
we
don't even
haven't.
You have a line out the door the first day?
No, no.
No, 'cause we
80%,
haven't,
80% of
we're
winners.
still like creating the application.
Oh,
they're
I
acknowledging
see.
Yeah, so we're about to roll it out. It just got approved at the council level, so
Uh,
internally, we're just creating the application and that type of thing, so
I thought it was, do you have a date for that?
probably in July,
Okay.
definitely.
But it's more just
Mid-July.
information sharing so people will know, like, the
Mhm.
benefits, the
Right.
incentives of joining registry.
Yeah, the outreach piece is gonna be big, but we do have a really good list of landlords now. So we're able to get the word out pretty well.
How did you get that list of landlords?
It was something that Robin, our community development officer, worked on.
Mhm.
So she was able to get a really good list of people, and we had about 12 to 15 at both of our meetings. Some people, so we
Ask
were
me questions
able,
if Gabrielle's here.
we were able to
In
connect.
memory.
Yeah,
Well, because I know that's part of the conversation, one of the hopes out of this rental registry is obviously sharing information to help places come up to. But also, how much of the community of rental properties are owned within the state versus out of state, how many people, we have a committee member this is a big passionate
And
area.
they're gonna be
Right.
fines, they're gonna get 4K and fines every 6 months if they don't.
Well,
Well,
but that's
if
if
it's
it's vacant.
If they're
Right.
vacant.
Oh.
No, we're talking
So-
about like if you have out-of-state, like LLCs or out-of-staters who are owning
Yeah.
properties who are
Right.
actually.
So part of that is coming in through the reval process.
Mhm.
Mm.
So part of the desire is always to know exactly what you have.
Mhm.
But in determining exactly what you have, you gotta go to every place and figure out exactly what you have.
Yeah.
That's gonna happen through the reval,
Mhm.
but that's a 2-year process.
Right.
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 Can you help me understand, like, I feel like I'm getting all of these mixed up, like what HRNA is doing
Yep.
versus the registry versus the reval for every home in Bangor, correct? So like, I feel like I need like a family tree for
You
how
need a
these all,
diagram?
for how these all like
Ooh.
interact with each other, or like, do they, is one of, does, do they
Good
fall
idea.
under
We
something?
should do
or-
that, sort of an active project.
Yeah, kind of like we got going already on the website for housing stuff.
So, at least we have something.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
I'm saying,
So-
so stick that, you
Yeah,
know.
so I would say that the HRNA work, we continue to hear you need housing.
Uh-huh,
So what we asked them to do is to dive, so they did the housing study for the state of Maine. And so what we said is, can you take what you did for the state of Maine and really drill down into Bangor? And say, based on the data that's available and all of the outreach we've done and the conversations we've had with developers, brokers, the whole 9 yards. You know, based on this, we believe that this is where you lack housing, or this is where your greatest housing need is. And that will allow the city as an organization to go, okay. I mean, at this point, we're just happy with housing,
Right, yeah.
you know, but this will allow us to more
Target.
target
The
how we
incentives,
want to
yeah.
invest.
Yeah.
So, for example, I don't know if I shared last month or if it was actually available, 'cause it just seems like it was, because it was only like 3
Right, it
weeks
was only
ago.
3 weeks
Yeah.
ago.
I'm s-
So, for example, Bangor Housing Authority was awarded funding through Maine State Housing to construct the first 50 units of senior housing on Sunset Avenue.
Yes.
Yes.
you did
Okay.
that.
So, but for example, what they shared with us during that application is Maine State Housing shared that the fact that the city contributed ARPA money to put in the infrastructure helped that project score highly.
Yeah.
So, probably what we'll look at doing on Grandview. Putting in an infrastructure so that we can buy down the cost of the development, so that we can ensure the property is built to meet the needs of our community.
Yeah,
So that's the HRA piece.
okay,
I'm sorry, that was the HRA piece, was to say, what should you be,
What should you do?
what are the gaps in Bangor?
Yeah.
It's great when you look at a statewide housing study that says you need 26,000 units. That's great, and you can check by area, and I think we're down east, if I remember correctly.
It feels kind of like what's happening right now is we're throwing darts in the dark. Like there's a board here somewhere and we're hoping that we're getting close to it. And that's why these studies and creating these
Correct.
registries is that we're shedding lights onto the dartboard so that we can be more efficient and more
Mhm.
accurate.
yeah, I just feel like,
Yeah,
I think people just say we're throwing spaghetti at a wall.
Well, and I would say what we're trying to do is move away from that
Right.
by developing true
Right.
information. We didn't have, none of us wants to wait 2 years until we figure out what we really have from a reval, do we?
No,
right.
no,
So let's take a deep dive into what the market looks like
got it.
and see, okay. Is it likely that private development will take care of market rate? Yep.
So can I ask a question as like, I feel like this is what I'm hearing and what people are afraid of, right? And how I need to understand how these work together. So we're HRNA is looking, seeing what's available, getting numbers, seeing what people can afford versus, with our medium income, right? The fear is that with the reval,
Yeah.
everybody's, taxes are gonna go up. And so is
So-
that sort of going to change what is actually available and affordable, what HRNA is finding? Okay,
Yeah.
but I feel like that's what people think.
Understood.
I feel
And
like they think like, oh my gosh, if people come and do a reval of my home, all they're gonna see are the things I'm trying to hide from assessors and my taxes are gonna go up and I can't live here anymore. That is I have heard this from so many people. And so I feel like people are like, there's already this like, don't open
Well,
your door,
people,
don't have them
yeah,
come in.
people have a tendency to catastrophize. But
Yeah,
generally speaking, people don't make decisions about housing based on taxes.
but but no, there are so many folks in the city that are being taxed out of
I know.
their, like, cannot afford to stay in here because their taxes are going up so much. Which is like, actually, an actual problem for a lot of folks.
So what the assessor will,
I don't know.
what the
I just-
assessor will, and maybe
So
I
many
should have the
said
assessor
that
come in
to
and
me,
talk
but
to
I
you.
was like,
to
well,
talk
I
about
just,
the reval.
I just wonder, again, like, does it feel like we're putting the cart before the horse if?
No.
Okay,
So the point of HRNA is to determine what we have within our community, what the pricing is, but also in general terms, what do we have for supply? What do we have for demand? And where should we be looking to invest?
They're like different data sources that will come together, cause like the HRNA to me is like, well, who is Bangor? Right? Who are we, right? And then the other piece is another part of who we are that helps tell us if we're doing what we're supposed to with our money in our projects and our approvals and our zone changes. And I get what you're saying, which is, well, we're gonna do this thing which could drastically change the numbers, this work that they're doing here, but I'm willing to bet that it wouldn't be too much work for HRNA to come in with this data 2 years from now and then relook at things. I'm willing to bet.
right, and I'm not saying that that's gonna happen, right? I'm not saying that this reval is gonna completely change
Yeah.
everybody's tax numbers entirely. But there is this.
I understand.
So maybe that's something forward thinking that this committee could be a little bit supportive of in terms of education and awareness and
Yeah,
really start trying to dampen this fear mongering, because it does feel like there is already so much like anti-reval
Understood.
rhetoric.
Right, well, because people see,
Right,
people go on Zillow or Redfin or whatever.
Right.
And see that the house that their taxes assessed for like $150,000 and their house is worth $350,000. According to the fair market value.
Right,
But everything is relative, right?
right.
So,
Because
I
2
mean,
years
the-
from now, we could see the housing market go down again.
correct.
no, but
That's
what
the
I'm
danger
saying is
too
that,
in this process.
yes, the property values went up with the market for people who are buying new homes or trading up to new houses. But the city also reduced the property rate to offset that
Mhm.
for a lot of folks. So, yes, people's taxes may have gone up, but they didn't go up like, like
Proportion.
proportionately to the fair market value. So, I mean, there's always gonna be pushback from,
I totally understand.
from people from homeowners against them,
Right.
against higher taxes.
And
There's
I-
always gonna be
Correct,
pushback.
and I think that's the automatic assumption is that with a reval, my taxes will be higher.
Yeah, that it
And
100%.
I
is.
think that the point of a reval is to ensure that the properties within a city are equitably valued.
Yeah, I
Because-
completely agree.
so-
I just feel like
I know.
I've been in these circles where people are like, oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, I won't, there's just not, people don't know. They don't.
Yeah.
And that is unfortunate, but if there's something that we can do to
Right.
actually
Ex-
educate
yeah,
and be in those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
What you're saying
to
is
your point,
100%.
yeah,
right, but
to your
people get so
point, we need
fearful.
to find a way to
Yeah.
help allay people's fears.
So we've done 2 in-person neighborhood meetings.
Right,
Our third meeting, I think, is this Thursday. It's on Zoom. We offered it virtual. So it is 6 PM Thursday. We're doing a virtual meeting. And it includes the assessor, it includes the folks who hold the contract, who are doing the reval. And talking people through that. We also have a frequently asked questions regarding the reval on our
Okay.
website.
that's.
And so to Andre's point, how I've explained it to someone is I said, the other thing is that the city has historically adjusted properties annually based on a market analysis. So what you see a lot of times in some communities is they've never done a market adjustment and everybody's property values, let's just say for the sake of argument, double. But if the property values double, and you need no more tax money, what happens is the tax rate is cut in half. So the tax bill in that instance doesn't change.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like all of this is accurate and correct. I'm not arguing. with you.
I know,
I feel like
we're
people-
educating here and
Yeah.
discussing because it's important.
This is not a gambit by the city to collect like a ton more money in taxes.
I know, but I think we all know that there are so
Yeah.
many folks out there who are literally like,
I completely.
oh, they're just
agree.
filling their
Yeah,
coffers
yeah,
again.
yeah,
You
my-
know,
my- I-
there are so many.
Friends.
We all have those friends and
I have friends
neighbors.
and family who are making that same argument.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
see it on Facebook too, don't worry, I see I see it all.
and I yes, now that I know that there is an FAQ and resources on the website, I will say that's not true,
Yeah, before you freak out,
right?
get a
Go to
little bit of
the,
education.
because again,
about
it's
this.
like, well, you know.
You're here
know
in the
what
city, you're in
people
it, yeah. Well, and I think this is also happening, we're in a heated time. We
Right.
can all be honest, the city of Bangor, housing is a heated conversation. The cost of everything is going up, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
My cable bill went up $12. When you do the math across here, what does that look like? You know, it does have everyday impact to people. So I understand it, but there's also, can we say, let's take a step back? Let's just take a breather, let's take a pause, you know,
Yeah.
and see what it does for the city, you know, that we're all supposed to, you know, hopefully benefit all of us in the long run, those of us who want to stay here, you know?
Yeah,
And my hope is, you know, once this is done in 2 years, like this initial analysis for HRNA, we'll have new projects come on board. So will that gap still exist?
Correct.
You know, the
Right.
1900 units of the housing, what does that look like? You know, once we get all that data, we have that better information on board. It's almost like we're painting by number a little bit, right? Or trying to. And it's
I'm
not
just glad we
easy.
have numbers.
I like hearing
That-
Right.
analogies tonight.
Yeah, it's the.
The boba. Yeah, no, that is helpful and, I'll continue to point people in the right direction.
And it's important because it's, you know, you all hear it and it's important to understand that there's somebody is more than happy to answer any question.
Mhm.
And it's not scary to call us.
Yeah, but people are you hear that one story, you know,
And it's,
and it's
It's
the
urban
headline.
legend.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions about the rental?
No, this is helpful, Anne, thank you.
Thank you. We had a meeting with, who did we meet with, guys?
With the chamber and
Yeah.
downtown.
Chamber,
Partnership.
And part of our conversation we had involved the community block grant. I didn't know if you want Anne to stick around to hear part of that conversation in case she had any thoughts she wanted to throw at that.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. So sort of jumping ahead, we,
There was nothing in
it's next on the
policy.
schedule.
It's next on
Okay,
subcommittee.
okay.
Yeah,
I like expect you're so thorough about.
well, I also know there's a meeting at 7, right?
Correct, right.
So
So
I'm
we need
like-
to be out of here in 20 minutes,
Okay.
15-20 minutes.
So Catherine, Leanna and I went to the chamber and they had, their entire, sort of leadership board, or everyone that works there really was there. And then Betsy came from Downtown Bangor Partnership, and what we wanted to sort of share was, you know, we're on the accessibility committee. We want to be more helpful to the city of Bangor and trying to understand what needs are there for accessibility. What can our committee do? Is it information sharing? Is it connection making? Is it? And then they explained to us sort of what the chamber and Downtown Bangor Partnership can do if we have information, resources, education to share. So we started brainstorming, right? Like, what's the low hanging fruit? What could we actually accomplish as a subcommittee that made it feel like we were making strides in accessibility for Bangor? And Betsy brought up that one of the problems is that you have all these block grant funds that are available for businesses if they needed to widen their door frame. You know, it was under that threshold of what is it, cost burden
Mhm.
threshold for the ADA. And just being able to create a resource where we could give downtown Bangor businesses or even, you know, landlords that own those buildings. These are the different funds and resources that are available to you if you needed a ramp built, if you needed that gap between your steps and the entryway filled, if you needed the door frame widened. It does sound like in what we've talked about, you know, making sure that you're pointing people in the right direction to those block grants, especially for the rental registry is sort of what you're already doing. So then what can we do to further support that? That was one of the ideas that came out of it, you know, just sort of almost creating infographic of what the city has and what the needs are and how we can bridge that gap.
So I think that the first piece is to ensure, you know, we were initially being part of the conversation, it came out of Kara's presentation last month, talking about accessibility, right, and all that stuff. And, you know, the idea of, do they even know these funds exist? So first and foremost, we don't want to step on your toes and put wrong information out there. That's very important, right? Because small business owners also are like, they need something tangible that they can do for themselves. Is this something they're interested in doing? So creating sort of these bite-sized bits of information. So I think the first question is, sounds like, yes, they could apply for the block grant funds to help improve their workspace and things like that.
Yep.
And then the second piece was this idea of creating like a self-evaluation of like their workplace to see if they are accessible, like, or are there areas where we're not accessible here? We would like to make these improvements and kind of create that like chain effect, if you will. Like, yes, we would like to make improvements. Here's a self-assessment. And then lead that into the application for the block grant or other
It was
conversation.
born out of, again, incentivizing businesses to take accessibility seriously. They all take it seriously, but to understand that while that feels like a big ask to have that ramp put in, it's actually going to benefit you in this way. So it came from, evaluating that if they do a self-evaluation tool, and they can either earn a badge to be an accessibility friendly business. That they could put the sticker in their doorway or on their website. It would sort of be up to us, I think, collectively as a group to decide what those questions look like. This isn't a brand new idea.
Or is there an existing tool
There's gotta
that?
be.
There's
gotta be.
There was already a tool that existed.
It has to be.
There, yeah, and so being able to add that, and then if they did not earn the badge, here's what you can do, and here's what resources are available from the city. That I think would be a really great way to direct them. And the other thing that came out of this as well is the education piece, right? So we were talking about, well, again, when you're thinking about business and trying to get people excited, people need to see themselves in downtown Bangor. They need to be able to say, like, I belong here. So by being able to educate, especially our business owners, how many people with disabilities are shopping, are eating at your restaurants, are, you know, participating? And if they're not, maybe it's because they can't get into your building.
don't
They
have
can't,
accessibility.
Or they can, but they can't get into the seating area.
exactly.
Or they can't get into the restaurant
Or they're in the
area.
seating area and it's too loud and it's too,
Correct.
you know, there's so many things outside of just like the mobility piece of it
Mm-hmm.
that need to be taken into account. And I think that's where people sort of stop short. It's like, do I need to widen a doorway or do a ramp? Check, I'm accessible. Not thinking about, I've got strobe lights going, you know, during my mealtime, or I have the music too loud, that, you know, all these little,
Automated toilets.
yeah, things, automated everything that make it really challenging. And so, by putting together not only the infographics of what it is that, we can do and where we can drive people, what does disability accessibility actually look like? You know, and giving that, and maybe doing a campaign with the city in terms of like social media, like, did you know that this many people with, you know, that need accessibility, you know, contribute this much to the Bangor economy? You know, this is that we're looking at, this is the information, like there's a lot of information. We talked about bigger things that we could do that I think we're really excited about in terms of accessibility, you know, month, and creating, you know, not only banners and ads and information sharing down the road, but the low hanging fruit really is looking into those tools that are available, driving people to the resources that are available, and information sharing.
It's all good.
Yeah, that is a great
I
idea.
continue to see them a lot more and more. So I noticed when I went into Hannaford that they are doing, they've designated, sensory hours.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
see more, but
It's a start.
you see more and more now that you never saw. You see it in the movie theaters.
Yep.
That's kind of the first place you saw it. And I don't blame them because I find movie theaters overwhelming at
Mhm.
times. And to see it in the grocery stores, and I know that they do it on the planes. The airport typically runs a program,
Yeah, you know, and those are part of the conversation, you know.
is
part
how
of
do
the
we build,
conversations.
it's the
Yeah.
building block.
Yeah.
Right, so like, yes, it's great, you have 2 hours designated Saturday
Right.
morning, but someone might need to go to the store at 6 o'clock at night.
After work,
Right.
right.
You
No,
know, and so it's
you have a
like,
disability, you can only shop during these hours.
So,
You're not
you know,
welcome otherwise.
it was a great conversation, but you know, one thing we said is, you know, we gotta make sure that we're mindful with whatever we're building and putting out there, which is why we wanted to make sure you're here for this conversation, because we don't wanna direct people to
No.
you with the wrong info, right? And if you have
Yeah.
existing tools or data, like if there is that data about how much of our population falls under, you know, the disability category, that would be beneficial if there's other programs that you know of that maybe has not come to our committee,
Right,
that we could
Yeah.
filter through that.
yeah,
Like she said, low hanging fruit, what can we start with? It's
Yeah,
already
that's good.
existing.
Yeah, yeah. It was really, I thought it was a really helpful
Good.
conversation to sort of identify, yeah, what can we actually do? Because there is a lot of excitement, but feeling like, yeah, where are we not stepping on toes? Where are we not being duplicative? What
Right.
can we actually do?
No.
That's sort of where we're at.
So if there's anything that comes to the surface mentally about that.
Well, and the good news is, you know, with the July off and us now finalizing our action plan for CDBG.
mhm,
And we'll get the rental registry pilot out, we'll have.
Yeah.
Perhaps a week or
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
To kind of look at where
That's
these other
to look
opportunities.
at everything else, yep, yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
me excited.
All right.
The only thing I really wanted to discuss on here, I know we're on a
Yeah.
crunch time, no one has said anything
Hold
about
on, hold
Bangor.
on. Sorry, Catherine.
I thought also the point of bringing it to this committee was to also go through these ideas and say, okay, of these priorities, which one are we choosing tonight?
Okay,
As because we're not meeting again until August, so
That's
I'd
fair.
like for you and I to have something to
That's fair.
do
yeah,
between now and August. Unless,
Yeah.
If it were, I'm just thinking where you've
Right.
already identified something like the low hanging fruit of creating, you know.
the self-evaluation, if
but
you can
it
spend
sounds
some,
like it could possibly also be duplicative of what you guys.
not from
No,
an
no,
accessibility
this is
standpoint.
different. This, because this
But
is
like
commercial buildings and downtown.
So you would be okay if
yeah.
we
Oh, yeah,
went ahead with that specific one?
Yeah, access.
think if you all
Access
could-
Bangor.
if you could, oh, nice.
That is your sticker.
Yep.
That is your
Yeah.
sticker right there.
Yeah.
Your badge.
And then you have the opportunity to fill in your badge based on particular,
Yeah, the different.
Initiatives.
Yeah,
Correct,
because we talked
right.
about just disability covers so many
Correct.
different things, but you know, between now and our next August meeting, you know, I think that might give you guys
Yep.
enough
and I
downtime.
think if you can find some of the self-assessment tools,
Yeah.
I think that would be, and kind of pull them all together.
The other thing they mentioned was that, and I don't know anything about this, but I do
Yeah.
think it would be helpful if there was a Bangor research office. Said something about grants or funding or some way that we could also, because this is a very, like, we could get more money
Yeah.
for this to
Correct.
add to the block grants.
Right.
And
So-
make it,
We do have a grant writer and a manager. And I
okay,
think if we can define the programs, we can provide that to that individual who can. This individual is always scouring and looking for the next opportunity, so
Right,
knowing
Honing in.
what we have for programs and what we're looking for funding will help him narrow down his search.
Yeah, thank you.
No,
Thank you so
that's
much,
good.
Catherine. You're like, okay.
I'm gonna hop down to Bangor Pride because no one responded to Debbie's email. Is anyone who's here right now actually able to staff the table that day? If not, I say we scrap it because we don't have the rest of the committee here and no one chimed in on the email. We could do
Gabrielle?
one more email, quick blast on it to see.
Yeah, I have another table that I'm working.
Yeah, and so do I.
I think you all do.
Yeah. So maybe tomorrow we do one more blast.
Yeah,
Say if
I-
I don't hear from you by Wednesday, we're gonna scrap the
I
table.
know that last year Melissa was there and that
Right,
was.
but her problem is she's gotta work this weekend. She can't-
No,
Well,
Gabrielle.
Gabrielle.
I'll,
Oh,
That's right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're lucky,
Wrong one.
together we all got that one.
Yeah.
But I would rather put it out there, give them a deadline if we don't have anything. Maybe we could create a table where someone sets up info that's, they can see it. And I know something was
Even-
created
even
last
if-
year.
Yeah, even if it could just be manned for like the first couple of hours, cause that's kind of the
When it's,
busy
That's the
time.
push.
Cause like from 2 to 4 is kind of like stragglers
Yeah.
really,
Yeah,
but if,
Yeah.
and you could just leave the table with information and unmanned.
Yeah,
for-
But I
from-
say we have to have
2 to 4.
a drop time.
So we need somebody to commit from noon to 2, is what I hear
Yeah.
Andre say.
I think that's reasonable. And again,
Okay.
no
Yeah.
one. Doesn't depend.
I can probably help set up the table,
Okay.
but.
I'm
Now
gonna say
now
check
that
your-
now
remember
that
that-
I'm the volunteer state president for ARP, I have to be at the ARP.
Yeah.
table.
that feels important.
Okay,
Okay, check your email, watch your email then
all right.
on that. I don't think any of the other subcommittees had anything,
Nope.
report anything else. So is there anything from the manager that we should know?
Oh,
And I
it's been a week.
I think the biggest thing is that information sharing on the polling stations, if we can all help
Yeah.
share that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's like 5 different polling
Yep.
stations, and I feel like that's something that's been asked a lot, of like
Yep.
what's available from the city.
Yep.
And the
That's on
first
site.
public restroom went up, correct?
It is. You're gonna get, if the press isn't one, they're going in Thursday.
Oh, okay. That's on.
First one's going in
In
Thursday.
time for Pride.
Correct.
Mhm, awesome. Which
I
one?
mean,
which
Pride
one?
will have their own
Where
porta
is
potties, but
So the first 2 locations are at Cascade Park and on Broad Street.
Great.
And I know the concrete pad is in. So that's
Broad
just-
Street?
Awesome.
Yep, so it's gonna be Thursday.
it's nice.
Are they doing like a ribbon cutting?
I don't know, maybe it's TP cutting. I don't know.
Amazing.
I think we're just gonna deploy them and they're here and Anne is working with the Cultural Commission on commissioning them as spaces for public art.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Also that art on,
Yeah.
heading up
Hammond
Hammond Street.
Oh, well, yeah,
Super fun to watch that go together.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
and the mural that's now down.
The ground mural.
It looks
Watching
so
that go
beautiful.
together it's just been really
Yeah.
fun to watch that. And
That's
enjoy
great.
it. Yeah.
That was really fun.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Well, we don't have a quorum, so I don't think we actually need to call a
Yeah.
meeting. I'm just gonna
Yeah,
say
have a
thanks
motion at the
everyone.
chair.
I'm gonna really quickly plug
Yeah.
a couple of events related to this committee.
Okay.
AARP events that are free. So there's an elder abuse presentation at the Gracie Theater
Mhm.
on Thursday. And that's in the morning. That's from 9 to noon. And you can register at the event. And they'll be serving a light lunch afterwards as well, which is also free. So that's at the Gracie Theater. And actually, the following evening at the Gracie Theater, there's also LGBTQ documentary film they're showing.
Ooh, you know which one?
It's called Bar Stories.
Nice.
Yeah. And that's also at the Gracie Theater,
Mhm.
reception at 5 o'clock. And then the film is being shown at 6 with discussions with the filmmakers after the film. Film's about 45 minutes.
That is so cool.
Again, free.
What day is that? I'm sorry.
That's Friday.
Friday.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah, 5 o'clock. So just go to aarp.com/ME. You look for the events and we do ask that you register, but
Okay.
again, it's free. You don't have to be an AARP member. aarp.org/ME.
Cool.
Who's the?
That's what I was waiting for.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Thanks, Andre. That's really awesome.
sure.
Oh, and then we'll start with some.
You went, we do need to wrap up, but
Yeah.
somebody has asked a question. I'd like to. Doug, can you hear us?
You're unmuted.
Are you there?
All right, we're gonna move to close this. I just want to quickly say, tomorrow is Juneteenth. I do know the Greater Bangor NAACP has advertised.
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you see the technology, someone with the city has to unmute me. And so that just happened. So I know you have to leave the room. I want to just thank you. I'm sorry that I've not attended meetings in the past. I know one or two of you and a couple of people were not there tonight. And I'm so glad you ended with the discussion about the bathroom, because I'll come back in August. Do you know when your August meeting is by any chance? It's okay if you don't at this point.
I believe it's on our calendar on our website, Doug.
Okay, I'll look. I just didn't know if it had been set yet. Because there will be an effort. I don't know how much time or attention you give to the segment of our population who are unhoused, many of whom are suffering from mental illness. And I devote a lot of time to it. I'm on my way to the encampment behind Hope House right now. And there'll be a push among a number of organizations, and hopefully some of you will join in, to convince the city, while 5 bathrooms are being constructed, that we build a 6th one and put it near the encampment. People go to the bathroom outside. The sanitation, the hygiene issues, the public health issues are extraordinary. And so there'll be an effort. I also want you to know that you'll receive the federal government. I'll be very brief. The federal government has
Hey, Doug, we do have to close up the meeting for
Yeah,
tonight. Because
I'm
come
just-
in and record this.
yeah,
They did, 27th is our next meeting. You are more than welcome to come and join in via Zoom or here.
and you'll get an email with the federal government's plan on how to deal with encampments. And I hope you'll all look at that, because that's really, really important. We are failing as a community.
Yeah, we take housing very seriously, and generally speaking, with the exception of this one, we do ask about homelessness just about every single meeting. So we definitely look forward to any information that you can provide for us to review, and we hope that you're able to join us at the next meeting.
You're going to get a lot of information. Thank you so much.
Thank you.